Satsang 2. Fire of the Sacred Heart. Part 1. April 6, 2019. Spontaneous healing through embracing Agape. As I said and announced yesterday, today, we will try to develop a certain number of things. That is, for the past 2 months I have been talking about the natural state, the eternal I and the fire of the Sacred Heart. Agape, Agape Resonance, Agape Resonance, Agape Resonance Network, leads us naturally to this fire of the Sacred Heart. I have already mentioned this Sacred Heart fire a little bit in terms of its functioning and structure, the last 2 satsang I had made, especially on March 8th, I believe. The natural state is not only Agape. Agape makes you discover the truth of love and makes you live love. The state that we have named the fire of the Sacred Heart is the culmination, in a way, of this Agape resonance that we have all tested, tried, here and everywhere and leads us to this natural state. The great difference between the fire of the Sacred Heart, beyond perceptions and manifestations, is, above all, an immediate effectiveness, independent of any intention, and will that necessarily and obviously leads to making you realize and make you live that the miracle becomes daily. It is no longer only the fluidity of unity, it is no longer only synchronicity, it is no longer only the state of grace. This natural state has found itself in our essence through this body and through incarnation, since we are still there and independently of any personal or collective circumstance. It puts you in a very special state where everything that is going to be before your eyes, everything that is going to pass through you, everything that you are going to encounter without any intention, without any will, without any decision to witness the deployment not of grace, but of the daily miracle. When I talk about miracles, why do I take that word? You know, miracles are something exceptional, that's why they're called miracles. If we take examples of spontaneous healings or mystical phenomena that have been described, studied, good, if we take the best known, even if it is a rather particular place, if we take the 18 miracles of Lourdes, where there had been spontaneous healings, for example, which have been analyzed by doctors and validated by doctors, then we can say today that, gradually or more quickly, you will find that you are yourself a miracle worker. But when I say miracle worker, that is, you do nothing, you are simply there, in the natural state, and everything happens independently of any will, any decision and any intention. That is to say, we no longer intend to do as we do, Agape Network or Agape Resonance Network, depending on whether we are 2 or more, as you have all tested and as you do them all. This means that from the moment on, you will witness the deployment of these miracles in countless areas of your life. There will also exist another mechanism in the fire of the Sacred Heart. It is, whatever the circumstances of your body, whatever the circumstances of your thoughts, whatever the circumstances of your emotions, whatever your behaviors, you live despite everything and despite everything that might seem to you the day before the previous days as something unsolved, you will find that even if it is not resolved, you pass over. Not by a decision or by a denial of anything, but because this state of love revealed and manifested by the radiant fire of the Sacred Heart, because it is a radiance, I will explain it to you afterwards, and will somehow activate what is called the true chakra of the heart. And now you know very well that it is very easy, for example, to have a knot in the plexus and to feel that it is blocked. At the level of the heart, even if there are symptoms, it is very difficult, and yoga teachers know this perfectly well, to perceive not the crowns, not the 3-beat rhythm, not the terrace at the level of the heart, or all the energies and information that are here, but to access this spontaneity and this grace. That is to say, today, given the testimonies, given what is happening, we can say that we are countless in the Christic state realized and accomplished. You'll then see that in your life, you can have very personal reactions, emotions, pains, sufferings, but that despite this, you remain in this joy and you can't go wrong. It is not an illusion, it is not someone who would be uprooted, it is not someone who would be in the illusion or in the astral, it is the truth. And this truth, you can only love it as a total evidence, or whatever the person's questions about your life, in whatever level it is. You do not pass over, you are not in denial, but the state of love totally magnifies your life. Obviously, it is something that appears, there is a description between the different energetic, vibrational, felt and perceived flows in the chest. I remind you that the fire of the Sacred Heart is the final activation of the heart chakra on this plane, since we are on the physical level, etheric at the level of the chakras, even if there are correspondences up to the causal level. You're in the truth of the experience, and this is permanent, whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever your character says, because we still have a character, even if we are free. Everyone has X problems in the course of daily life. At that moment, you are settled in the eternal I. It means that whatever happens in your character, in your effects, in your emotions, in your thoughts, you are no longer subject. You are no longer subject to your history, to your person. However, there is no denial of the person. That is to say, there is indeed an outcome of this alchemy we have been talking about for months and years, which has been prepared by the elders, stars and dark angels for many years, and not only in terms of past teachings that no longer exist, but also in older books. I always take the example of dialogues with the angel. Today, everything that was described and that seemed incomprehensible, even if it was very pretty, today, is beginning to be experienced. We are not 1, we are not 10, we are not 1,000, I have no idea of the figure, but we are now sufficiently numerous in the theatre scene to experience or begin to experience this natural state that obviously this cannot leave any doubt. In relation to that, you have to understand and accept that you don't decide when. But on the other hand, you will inevitably find that the more you practice this practice without the practice of Agape resonance and network Agape resonance, you will find, as you already find here, that you feel, if not the heart chakra, at least what is really called the heart of the heart. That is, the central point of the heart chakra, the rod of light that is in the middle. This rod of light is unlocked in its entirety, that is, the radiance of the heart at that moment becomes what has been represented in Christian iconography with what is called the glorious heart of Christ, or Christ in glory. But not Christ on the cross. The crucifixion, the resurrection, the sacrifice, everything that we have developed and that is beginning to be experienced, you know very well that when you live it, what appears as a sacrifice for the ego, in fact is really replaced by what I have called this embrace. The notion of embracing is where there can be no enemy whatsoever, where love is carried independently of any intention with the same look, the same intensity, the same quality on everything you look at, everything you touch, everything you think, whatever the remnants of your mind or your character that we have called the monkey or the parrot say. You see it in action. Try to train yourself in doubt or in a negotiation somewhere that has no reason to be with this natural state. This is where staying still makes sense. And when I talk about miracles, indeed, miracles will happen. It is not therapy, it is not energy, it is not medicine, it is not prayer, it is exactly, if we take up a reference in ancient writings and in particular in the Bible, even if it has been falsified, it is the passage of Christ who walks in the streets and asks who touched him. And the woman who was bleeding no longer bleeds. These miracles establish themselves. The rectification of the epical light by the true light, the rectification of the falsified axis which has now begun at the level of the earth itself and of the whole of creation and the solar system, translates for us into an access to the permanent miracle. But it is not you who decide. Of course, the miracle works by itself from the moment, indeed, as we have always said, when there is no one left, that is to say that there is neither the other nor you. Because, in consciousness, energetically, mentally, causally, you live that the other is in you. Even the worst of what you could have called the day before enemy, can only be you. That is what Nisargadatta was already saying at the time, those 2 or 3 texts I published yesterday where he said that everything happens naturally and that his works could not fail, because obviously at the time, it did not happen in the Baita texts of the 80s, it is most of the texts we had, that we transcribed. He told us all the time that these works could not fail. This is what you are witnessing and this is what you are experiencing right now, with more or less intensity, because once you have felt the first point, which is the center of the heart chakra, even if you have never felt the energies, nor the crowns, it is the case, there are people today, who live this natural state without having gone through this vibratory learning, energetic, vibratory understanding of everything that was experienced. When you are in this natural state, it is much more than the state of grace, it is much more than the manifestation of grace, because it will touch from the physical to the densest plane to the purest plane of pure light, that is, to the level of the so-called Atmas plane, that is, to the level of the Parabrahman, above, that is, to the Absolute. the link and connection, if we can say so, between being, non-being and person, is achieved in a sufficient number of human beings. Of course, this natural process is automatic. It does not depend on your will, it does not depend on your questions, it depends, I will say, ultimately, only on your ability to accept the unacceptable. But beware, when I say embrace the unacceptable, what seemed to you as a person something unacceptable, that it concerns an illness, a suffering in you, in a relational aspect, in some part of your life, making something acceptable is not forcing yourself. It is embracing in itself that naturally makes something acceptable. And this is how you will notice, as many of us have already noticed, that a certain number of disorders that could exist within the person, whether it is a real illness, a psychological problem, a behavioral problem, or if it still seems to you that there are wounds, you will notice that the more you accept the unacceptable through embrace, you will become aware and verify that even the worst of your enemies, that even the worst of your suffering ultimately depends on you, because there is no one else. As we have always said, there is only one heart, the law of one. Today, we are living it and we will live it in its entirety. So, of course, in this period of adjustment, and you can see it in you and around you, we have brothers and sisters who are almost in stasis. We have brothers and sisters who feel that they cannot lead their normal, elementary life, if I can say so, of any human being, even washing and dressing. This stasis process, you must understand, for those who experience it too intensely, if I can say, somewhere, that at the moment, contrary to what I said last year about proprioception, how to recover your body and your functions, while you are abusing yourself, you move around and you will notice very quickly, that if you ignore what are no longer light injunctions, but a state of pre-stasis, as it has been called for a few months, you will be able to recover your activity to a certain point. But the certain point, as I call it, will no longer be individual, but collective. That is, what has been called the event, whatever its nature. Before see the questions, I will still give, for those who are interested in what is happening on the energetic and vibral level in the chest, what has made the heart chakra and the heart of the heart emanate by its radiance. I remind you that when the heart chakra, I am not talking about crowns, I am not talking about the igneous fire, I am really talking about the true heart chakra, which is in the middle of the chest. When you are going to feel this little spot, at some point, you will feel the little chakra. Because it is small, the heart chakra. The crown is something else, that is the interaction between the physical plane and the planes of light. On the other hand, on a purely physical and etheric level this time, you will feel the small chakra of the heart, and at that moment and at a given moment, you will feel that there is an emanation, a radiance that is permanently made by 24 threads of golden light that each represent one of the facets of what we had called the heart of eternity, that is, the tetrahexadron, which is made up of a diamond core, which is made up of 24 triangles that rotate on themselves and shimmer inside each other, which are no longer enclosed, but emanate on this plane. You're in a Christic state, whatever you think and whatever you say. Even if at first it may seem surprising to you, you'll have to see this. At that moment, of course, you are still an Agape, you are still doing Agape resonance, you are still doing Agape resonance network, but you will find that, at that moment, there is a perception in you that is real, physical, etheric and not elsewhere, which corresponds to the activation of the heart chakra on the plane, and there, of course, the miracle is permanent and it happens all the time, but you have nothing to do with it. There, one of the traps would be to attribute to yourself the reality of some action, whether in you or on someone else, even without intention. You will find, as last year you noticed after the alpha, the primary anomaly, that everyone was smiling, that everyone was in joy without knowing why, even on the street. There, you will notice the same thing, but no longer on the level of the smile, it is on the level of the transmutation of the automatic matter that will be done, but also on the level of the transubstantiation of your psychological, emotional and mental functioning. All this is done without any effort, without any will, without any intention. And the more you let go of intention, the more you let go of understanding, the more you let go of the questions of your monkey or parrot who will whisper to you that this is not true, that it is not possible, that it does not exist, the more you will enter into trust. Not in you, because it is not the same level. Self-confidence is the second chakra, but in confidence in what is at the heart level. Trust is no longer linked to the will, on the second chakra, to power, but is linked precisely to the abandonment and concrete realization that we are really all in each other and that ultimately there is neither one nor the other, nor anyone else. At that moment, of course, you are free from even physiological contingencies. I am telling you not to look for them. As I have explained to you, all the central regulation functions of the individual are destroyed. What are the so-called central control functions? These are all functions related to epiphysis, that is, hunger, thirst, sleep, thermal regulation, and appetite regulation. You have all noticed that your sensitivity to heat and cold has become profoundly different, either certain times of the day or all day. There is either the fact of feeling frozen, or boiling, and the most paradoxical thing is sometimes to feel both frozen and boiling. That is to say, all the usual reference points on which sits, I remind you, the conception of believing you to be a separate individual, who is linked to the reptilian brain and therefore to the epiphysis among others, to the pineal, as they say, shows you today that you are not separated and that you are only this love and especially not a story, especially not your person and especially not a scenario, that you are this eternity manifested within this world. So after that, there's nothing to do with it, there's just following what life offers you, and anyway, you can't do otherwise, not because you're inactive or you don't have any solutions, because it seems obvious to you. You drop everything. It does not mean that you are in a state of disinterest, in indifference, but on the contrary, you're in what was called long ago, the fluidity of unity. Today, I would call it the fluidity of the Absolute, that is, this unknown of which Buddha spoke is now perfectly known, because it is perfectly experienced by an ever-increasing number of brothers and sisters every day and every hour. And when you pass through this sacred fire of the heart, when you realize that you feel, even if you have never felt anything, even if you have never felt any crown, that the central point in the middle of the chest on the chakra of the heart is active, you will witness the emanation of your own heart. This emanation is neither nor vibratory. Even if it passes through the support of the energy and radiance of your heart chakra, it will pass through what I have called the fire of the sacred heart. You call it as you wish. Once again, they are only words, but it results in a radical change in all the mechanisms of functioning. You always remain a human being, you always remain simple, you always have emotions, you always have your mental activity, but you are no longer fooled. There is at that moment a form of relaxation, that is to say everything that could resemble resistance, wounds, abnormal behavior, all this has been seen, illuminated and crossed, all this is alchemized. And this final alchemy, of course, is realized in the heart chakra. That is to say, all the structures we had talked about until now and which have been lived, the crown of the heart, the ascensional crown, the new tri-unit, the Marian channel for those who lived it at the time that begins there and reaches the level of the chest, the rise of the wave of life, the descent of the energies of earth at the level of the triangle of earth from the head through the median channel of the spine, the Sushumna, but that we call the channel of the ether because it no longer has anything to do with it, since it is lined with light descending to the heart. The fire of the sacrum has also risen to the heart, and at that moment the axis called curiosity, which is located at the level of the fifth dorsal and the chakra of the heart in front of it, are in spontaneous emanation, that is to say that on a plane, and we could measure it besides, it means that on a purely physiological level, you all know, and I have always said that the most powerful electromagnetic center of the human being collectively and individually has always been the solar plexus, even when the vibratory structures have been opened. It's over now. It's the heart that has taken over electromagnetically. It has become the most active energy center, and therefore also the most active center of consciousness, whatever you say and do. At that moment, it does not mean that you see life in pink. On the contrary, you see with acuity, with a certain crudeness. Nothing can escape you, not because you seek to understand, to see and to grasp, because it is self-evident. A first approach to this had been experienced last year by some people that I had explained, in particular at the level of care where I left my body in my body of eternity of any shape. I could wear any suit to see that plane and treat that plane, except that now, as the other is really in me, I no longer need to put a distance, I no longer need to put a time or an appointment. It happens all by itself, and it doesn't depend on me and it doesn't depend on you. It is only the articulation and emanation of the intelligence of light on this densest plane that is transitory at all levels, and this is exactly what is happening. So, do not despair if you do not live it. Continue your pursuits of Agape. Continue your pursuits of Agape Resonance Network without asking yourself questions about this sacred heart fire, but you will not be able to miss it. There is a very simple reference point even before you notice the changes in your natural, habitual functioning mechanisms, this perception in everyone, even those who have never felt the energies. Because here we are not at the energy level, we're at the physical level, so the point you feel is physical, it is not energetic, it becomes energetic when the heart chakra turns and you pass into radiance. The point of reference is a sensation, even a pain, very punctual, very permanent, on an area that is 1 centimeter in the heart of the heart chakra that has been called the heart of the heart until now, which has therefore entered into emanation through the radiance of the Christic state that I called the fire of the sacred heart. Or if you have references that we will say more Christian, you will call it the glorious heart or the Christ in glory. This is exactly what we are experiencing. This is exactly what is responsible for the miracle, and the miracle affects the organs as well. On the other hand, what you need to know is that when you experience this, so much so with Agape resonance, I insisted that it was not a care, but when I read everything that happens and everything that brothers and sisters do on different groups, everywhere, in all countries, they use Agape Resonance Network for everything. But it's very good, because it gets them used to working with the heart of eternity, with their vibrational, with their consciousness or their superconsciousness. And now it's happening at the physical level, that is, at the densest, most incarnate level. And that is what makes the miracle so obvious. But again, you can't say you're the one who acts, you can't say it's going to act every time, you can only see what's happening in you and in everyone else. As I have explained to you for many years, I had a number of diseases, like everyone else, hereditary diseases, which have disappeared. I did nothing, I did not seek to treat anything, it is the miracle of this Christic state. And more of us will be living it. That is to say, there is no longer a need for a reference frame, there is no longer a need for intention, there is no longer a need for a diagnosis, there is no need for understanding, there is no need to want to act, there is no need to consider that there is another. When the fire of the Sacred Heart is there, it is active, even if you are not aware of it. This is what many brothers and sisters have noticed who, you know, I do Agape sessions all day long for people who ask me, on Facebook, by email. People don't have time to write their request that they are already being treated. Do you think I'm going to claim causality for myself? Not at all, it's natural, I had nothing to do with it. Which means that by dint of making Agape Resonance Network, which are not care, but you discover that it also treats, it can even be used before job interview as I saw yesterday. It can even treat, as I saw it pass to, I was the first surprised, a dental abscess, instantly. When I say instantly, it's the miracle, it's not energy, it's not chemistry, it's not prayer, it's not even vibrational, it's natural. Obviously, we will have to get used to it, it's so new, it's so, I would say, so crazy, it doesn't obey any known rules, and yet that's what's happening. So I'm still going back to what I wanted to describe. So, the heart chakra, we just talked about it, many years ago, you remember, there was what was called the New Eucharist, with 3 particular points that are the center of the heart chakra, the soul chakra above the right breast and the spirit chakra above the left breast. This is the triangle of the New Eucharist. After that, there were a number of alchemies. There was the ascending crown of the heart, there was the fire of the heart, which was a vibrational fire, which was replaced by the igneous fire. Then there was the fusion of the Marian channel, directly into the heart. This explains, for example, on an energetic level, that when at the time, even last year, when stopped, for example, ever, when I was channeling, or bided, in September 2018, well, people no longer saw a presence coming down to my left in the Marian channel, as was the case with Enel, with all the speakers, for all those who saw, it is something that comes directly from my heart. So, it comes from within, it does not come from another dimension, through the Marian channel, it comes directly, I would say, from your combined presence and absence, that is to say from your being and your non-being, which are in natural, spontaneous, automatic action, on this world, independently of you. So, as soon as you feel this little spot, naturally, as soon as someone will think of you, even without a will of Agape, he will be touched by grace. It does not concern Jean-Luc or Young, it concerns all the brothers and sisters who are going through this. And you will see this more and more clearly. As much last year, you saw the smiles of people smiling at you for no reason, so much so, you will see that it is no longer a smile. It is that people will find themselves all stupid, because all of a sudden they will be healed, but it is not you who heal, it is not the other who has asked for healing, it is the intelligence of the light that you are beyond any form, which is now active on earth. Since the end of the primary anomaly, it took 10 months, I remind you, to arrive in May 2018, after the somewhat troubled period we experienced between February and March, which was the period when the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine were, sometimes in a virulent way, showing you that in the end, there is no man or woman. And that all the distances, or misunderstandings, or oppositions between the feminine and the masculine, which are omnipresent in this world, on all relationships, no longer exist. You have joined the primordial androgynous one. The 12th body is active, there is no longer any possible duality, whether you like it or not. And that's the chemistry, all these structures, that I'm telling you about. So, we take up again, the Marian channel which has merged with the heart, the triangle of the new Eucharist, the vibrational flow of the wave of life, which settled in the heart after ascending to the head, the supply of this heart by the electric fire of the sacrum and by the fire of your earth triangle, all this is alchemized in the heart and leads to the release of the organ heart and the chakra of the heart on the physical and etheric level. The first steps were, as I explained, the 3-beat rhythm at the heart level, the double terrace that had set in with the flows that leave this region of the heart with a flow that goes around in the direction of the exit from the heart to join Kiris T and the other that leaves Kiris T that will join the sense of the heart, what we had called the double terrace. I remind you that this double terrace is the structure of the matrix, that is, it is what has been called the first dream of creation, which has been nothing more than the dichotomy between the male and the female. At that point, you join the primordial androgynous one. That's sacred. In terms of the puppet's theater scene, the equivalent is what we call transgender people, neither male nor female. The theory of gender is inversion. To say that there is no man and no woman, we are men and women, but we are no longer marked by gender difference. That is, everything that was experienced powerfully in February between men and women, at all levels, is now resolved. Because the fire of the sacred heart suppresses all this appearance, all this difference between man and woman. Here, I am speaking on an archetypal level because, of course, before the polarization, before the first dream of creation, before the first birth, what I called the first birth, which was lived in the belly of the whale for 40 days, between February 19th and March 30th, which was illustrated on the scene of this world by the simulacra of the cameraman who was swallowed by a rorqual and spit up, you see that everything is synchronized. I have always said that the sacred and the simulacra meet. If you look at the mockery, you can see that it corresponds to the sacred. What is at stake in all countries between the established patriarchal power and the people? The people represent the female force, the patriarchal power represents the male force. That is why on the world screen, what happens in you, in the primordial androgyne, happens on the world scene. If I take France, with the yellow vests that discovered brotherhood on the roundabouts, that discovered that they did not need the state, that they did not need external authority, this movement is inevitable, even if they express themselves in a not always coherent way, but the important thing is that this archetypal confrontation of the male and the female, which are indeed the initial polarity of the yin and the yang, if you prefer, have never been separated. That's why the symbol of the Chinese yin-yang, which explains that in every yin there is a yang and in every yang there is a yin, I can tell you today that there has never been a yang and a yin. You join what the Chinese call the anterior sky, or the unmanifested sky, while being present in the manifestation. It is a total sign of the event that is underway, whose date is unknown to anyone and yet we are living. And that the more we live it, the more we will pass through this sacred heart fire that does not depend on you, nor on any intention, the more you will witness miracles, whatever they may be. Whether it concerns your body, your psyche or the people you smile to on the street, or members of your family, love is there. There is no longer even any need for resonance for some time. There is no longer any need to consider that there is a transmitter, a receiver, or that it is happening between the transmitter and the receiver. It happens all by itself, because there is no longer any possibility of separation. And the sharpness of the inner struggle between the masculine and the sacred feminine in itself, has allowed women to recover what? Not their sacred feminine, but their sacred masculine. And allowed the men to recover what? Not their sacred male, but their sacred female. There was a real delivery. This first birth is the story of creation. So let's go back to that chemistry that happened there. The Agape network resonance is the 3-beat rhythm, it is the double terrace in action, that we did when we were with a perpetual bath of love, on the BAP, that you do between you now joyfully. I see groups where they spend their day making Agape, so good, if you can call it that, but it's going to lead to that. As soon as you let go of this story of masculinity and femininity, as soon as you accept that everything you have seen, everything you have experienced, even the vibrations that have led you to this point, even the energies, all the work you have done, for some, for many lives, for 10 years, 20 years, or all this life, finally leads to the uselessness of all this. But we had to succeed. Indeed, there is no longer any need for teaching. That's what I was saying. I don't have much more to say to you. So, Vedam will come this afternoon, in vibrational language throughout channeling, will certainly trigger something at 3 o'clock, but I don't know any more than you do right now. What can be said is that the more you have gone through a crisis at this time, whatever the nature of that crisis, in the 2 that have passed, the more certain you are that you have gone through, paradoxically, that is, that you have integrated the sacred male and the sacred female, showing you that there is no difference between man and woman, basically, whatever the appearance of genitalia, behaviors and what you want. At that moment, you're in the state of primordial androgyne, you're Christ, but not the historical Christ. The historical Christ does not mean anything, the historical Christ, it is simply the first person who lived all of this. As Christ said, what I did, you will make it even greater. But this is not related to speech, it is related to silence, it is related to tranquility, it is related to unconditional embrace. Try it. I urge you to check something. We all have people we don't get along well with, whether it's our children, husband, wife, family, friends, where there are crises. What seems most unacceptable to you, the person who was your executioner, and you know that if it is your executioner, it corresponds to a flaw in you, so there is no point in accusing him, the other, or accusing you. Embrace, do that. But there is no need for energy, there is no need for posture. Decide in your mind simply, I accept, even the unacceptable. As I said, it will become acceptable once you have embraced. I am not asking you to accept it before, I am asking you to try to experience it, especially those who have made Agape network resonances. You think of the person with whom you have the most problems, whether they are called the enemy, whether they are called confrontation in the couple, with the children, with a friend, with a superior, with anyone, the person who excites you, who annoys you the most. We all know that, people we love, but who annoy us seriously. There are some who will recognize themselves, there are some who listen. It's okay, accept it, embrace them without hesitation, without any preconceptions, and you will see. If you really embrace him, it's over. The central point in the middle of the physical chest is activated and you pass from Agape resonance network, from the state of Agape, to the Christic state, in totality. I can't tell you anything simpler. Try with those you consider your worst enemy, not to be nice or show a brand. Go ahead, it's there, we're no longer angry and so on, just in your corner, in silence, being quiet at a time when it seems to you that you might be more appropriate in your embracing state, when you don't have 50 things to do, when you sleep, when you wake up at night, when you do nothing. At that moment, you decide to embrace, cross, the one who has ridiculed you the most, deceived you, humiliated you, the people with whom you have problems. And even in the Agape brothers and sisters, we all have different personalities. Embrace this and you'll see what's going on at the same time. And it's one, and that's really how it works. You no longer need teaching, you no longer need energy, vibrations or anything else. So, of course, there are times when you have to get into vibrations. In fact, during the crystals yesterday, I mentioned it. There is no shame in using crystals or crutches. Everything is to deceive your monkey, to satisfy your monkey, the parrot, the mind, your character. But if you embrace, you will see that at that moment you discover that you are Christ, even if you have never experienced vibrations, even if you have never experienced energy or a state of modified consciousness, of spirit consciousness, even if you have never had visions, even if you do agape, I feel nothing, I live nothing. Find yourself a target. I would have said at the time, eat it. Yes, that's right, eat it. It's in you, eat its essence. What makes you react is necessarily within you, it can't be any other way. Everything that happens to you, everything that happens to us, is only here to lead you to this, from the most intolerable pain, from the most deadly disease, from the most important psychological, emotional imbalance. And then, at that moment, of course, through the embrace, through the Agape network resonance, you notice that there is no longer any difference. What Agape was saying is a text that was republished yesterday, where Bida says there is love. People ask him, but you live love. But yes, he says, yes, you are love. Well, yes, but how do we do it? He explained what I'm explaining to you here, in his own words. Embrace everything, remain calm, as Osho said, remain in silence. When we say remain in silence, it does not mean not speaking, it means not interacting with the outside world, not denying it, but embracing it. Today, which was not possible a few months ago, if you do it, it's over. It's easy to love the people you love, it's an understatement, but it's the truth. Love those you do not love, as much as you and as much as the loved one, and you will find, as Bhatti said, as I tell you, as I live it, that there are no longer any differences, that love, this emanation that is there, can no longer make a difference. But of course, on a personal level, the personal love you have for your partner, your twin flame, in a relationship with a child, with a husband, with a parent, will always be there, but you will find that the quality of your relationship, your interactions will never be the same again. But again, don't do it with the intention of healing, caring, or wanting to solve a problem, because that's the person. To erase your person by the principle of embracing, it will be effective, and it is effective. Last year, it wasn't effective. You even smelt the perfume of others. You realized that we were in each other, that we were seeing, I see you, you seeing me. The absorption of essences has already led, of course, to a number of things. But now we're moving on to something more tangible, if I may say so, more material, more physical, more concrete, somewhere more and more permanent and more visible, because you can't cheat with that. Of course, whether you like it or not, even if sometimes you need your character, well, you can only notice that even if there are emotions, even if there is, I would say, a mental iteration, you know, the obsessive thoughts that come back, about a problem, you see them, they are always there. But the radiance of your sacred heart dissolves it instantly, so the passage from Agape to the fire of the sacred heart is done on its own. There is only one basic principle to embracing. Of course, you know well, for those who have experienced it, going up in vibration, it lightens up, do not hesitate, it is still crutches, it will not make you live the fire of the sacred heart, but it will put you in total embracing dispositions. Yesterday, when we talked about crystals, which will be disseminated and transcribed, we talked about a stone, for example, called nematoid quartz, which is the stone of Marian compassion. We talked about fluorine in broad strokes, but a stone that is going to be placed on the heart will not make you live the fire of the sacred heart, but it will favor the energetic planes, that is, favor alignment, favor your exchanges, whether by words or by Agape resonance, or Agape network resonance. And that, the more you do it, the more you will see, and as I see in all the brothers and sisters who do that, the appearance of this central point of the chest, which will never leave you again, you're in a Christic state and miracles abound. With regard to that, before move on to the written questions, are there any questions with regard to that presentation? If there are no questions, I'll follow up on what you wrote. First question. Why is it so difficult to heal yourself? Healing is the Christic state, there is no other. So of course, that doesn't mean I can't use energy if someone makes a specific request to me. Yesterday, we had to treat an organ liver in an emergency, so what I usually never do, I do it from time to time, is transmute the matter right away. In fact, the person it was made on felt it. But that's not the way to act, because there, you mix your will, you mix energy, you mix the vibral. The purest love is neither vibrational, does not need energy, is beyond the manifestation, and yet it is in manifestation here. You are sure that when it is active at the central point and the hard chakra, the little hard chakra that is there, begins to rotate, that radiance begins to appear, you can only notice that you can only be in benevolence, even with the one who makes you angry, because he makes you the worst personal crap. What can you do besides love it? You can't do anything else. It's not you who decide, it's a natural state. At that moment, you notice that you are in a Christic state and that, above all, you are not claiming anything. That's what it means to be nothing. Things are done independently of you, so what seemed impossible or what seemed to be such a rare miracle today is constant, and it will become faster and faster, more and more amazing in terms of efficiency, more and more immediate, more and more spontaneous. Remember that I always told you that I was just living things a little early. It was the same since the heavenly wedding. Now, we live them synchronously. When I say synchronous, it's not 6 months from now, nor it's a year from now. As soon as you embrace, it is over. You don't even have to ask yourself questions about how you will embrace. You say it with your mind, with your thought, with your decision, and it is over. So why is it so difficult to heal yourself? Based on what I just said, you will find that healing is self-healing. There is no need for energy, there is no need for a therapist, there is no need for understanding, there is no need for explanation, there is no need for causality. Agape love is the solution, so you will find that you can also heal yourself, not by intention, by letting what is happening happen there. And what will disappear, from your bodies, from your energy fields, from your consciousness, you can only observe it, and it is not you who decide. And you will also notice that, even in this Christic state, for you, not for the other, yesterday, for example, I acted on someone's liver, physically, at a distance. It works right away, even without knowing these people, but that for you, in self-healing, if you can say so, the more you embrace, and this embrace will become spontaneous, the more you will notice that your energy fields are restoring, that your aura becomes totally white, and that what was happening as a functional, organic, psychological anomaly, no longer exists. You did nothing to make it disappear, you simply accepted what you were first, and if you accept what you are, you can only accept even the worst of bastards, the worst of the obnoxious. That is what Agape said in the text I republished yesterday. He said it clearly. The one who asked him questions told him you're in love. Does that mean that you love the odious, the criminal in the same way? He answered yes, and I answer you today that it is the strict truth. You can no longer make a difference. As long as you feel you can make a difference, you are not free. It goes very far. When I talk about love, it is not only in human relationships, it is by looking at a plant, by looking at a bird, by watching a whale video. There is no longer any scale, there is no longer any possible discrimination, and when you experience that, of course, it is over, because as I said, it is a natural state. You don't need anything else but to be in your life, and everything will be done. And you also accept that even if you have a serious illness or pain, it is magnified and transmuted. I would even say that it is not a transmutation, it is a transubstantiation, because it acts on the level of the organs. Now, be careful, it's not medicine, it's not energy, it's not therapy, it's a miracle, but saying that you're going to perform miracles is already a mistake. The miracle is done by itself, it's done without you and without the other. For that, on a purely practical level, embrace. So don't think I love my enemy, since when you say I love my enemy, it's obvious you don't love him. But embrace him. Don't ask yourself questions about what it means to embrace, your brain knows what it means. It's like love and agape. There are some who screamed at that word. I'm sorry, agape, your brain knows very well what it is. Moreover, what it is, moreover, you have all seen it. When you repeat agape, 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 something happens, or faham, faham. I have nothing to do with it, it is a resonance that is inscribed in you, that awakens now, in the same way that eternity is inscribed even in DNA, and that the Absolute is also inscribed in you. Simply, it was unknown, as Bhatti said, we could not know it. I tell you today that it is known, because it is lived, and there is no other solution. So yes, self-healing will happen. It happens by the grace of the Christic state, but sometimes also with an intention, as I explained to you. What prevents you when you experience this from voluntarily directing the intention yourself? There, you need an intention, on an organ or on a function. Do it, but it depends on where the intention comes from. If the intention comes from your person, it will not work. If the intention comes from love, because you feel it when you live the fire of the Sacred Heart beyond all the crowns, all the vibratory structures, so when you return to this natural state, you feel it. I feel it very well when I am in my heart, not intellectually, but vibratorily or physically. When I am in my head physically, I spot it instantly. I don't have to ask myself any questions. Remember, the head fused with the heart, the sacred luminous egg that puts into action the personal merhaba is active. The head joined the heart joined the head to perform the miracle of one thing. So go ahead, use it, but use it not with the person's intention, but first place yourself in the heart. And when I say place yourself first in the heart, it is not intellectual, that is, you feel that your consciousness is there, heart, and no longer there, head. This is what Douglas Harding called headless vision, except that Douglas Harding's headless vision, at the time, did not make you experience love, it made you experience the self, and we know that the self, the I am, which is the step, if you will, to find, is also an illusion. What Buddha said at the end of his life, there is no I am, it is an intermediate strategy, there is only love, there is no world, there is no dimension, there is no dream, that is, the natural state. It is the state that you will keep in any body of eternity whatsoever, it is the state that you will keep beyond any form, beyond any world, it is what you are. So, self-healing, yes, it will be done, but once again, you can also, when it is well established, this radiance, not the central point, but the radiance of the heart, at that moment, you are Christ and you can say it, I and my Father are one. And what you do to the smallest of you, you do to me. And that, you live it, it's not a concept and it can't be any other way. So here, I am simply asking you to observe this reality, to observe it, through your experience. I had already told you, Agape Resonance Network, you know, brothers and sisters who made appointments on the phone, or on Facebook, or by email, to be at a specific time. Now you have understood for the most part, you can do it in ultra-temporality, but not only for the time after, but also for the time before. That is to say, you can intervene in a group that has made a network Agape Resonance 2 hours before, you participate in it in ultra-temporality and it works, so there is no more distance, there is no more time, there is no more space. This is what is happening in the myth of creation. In our solar system, as you know, there are dead stars accompanying the procession of Napier, who are eating everything. It's real, that. It is something very concrete, it is what is happening in us, and we realize that this disappearance, with the people who live the pre-stasis, leads us, if we have the time, to live in this state. And it's beyond our control and you can't do otherwise, and you can't ignore it. Those who do not yet live it, have no worries, have no expectations, look no further, embrace yourself too. If you embrace it as over. But in the principle of embracing, there is no yes, but, even if there are emotional reactions or your mind telling you that it is impossible, ignore it, and at that moment, you will be Christ, nothing more, nothing less. You will be the worthy burning sun whom we called Kiristi, the burning sun of the sun. You know that the Nephilim, they were called the torches of fire. The torches of fire are that the heart is burning, and you will see at that moment that the other, the enemy, the friend, the husband, the wife, the child, is much more important than you, because it is he who is you. What Christ said, what you do to the least of you, it is to me that you do it. And you can't help it, you're in the same state. But you don't need to drive the merchants out of the temple like Christ did at the time, you just have to embrace them. If you accept this principle of operation, if you implement it, this practice cannot fail. It is impossible because the conditions are in place for it to happen now. The childbirth took place, the sign of Jonah, of which I spoke without spreading myself too much, because I don't want to go back too much to old references. That's exactly it. It's the 40 days of Christ's desert crossing. We lived there for a number of days, the sign of Jonah collectively, between February and the end of March. And now, since the new moon, all this is being revealed. So, it is at this moment, it is not tomorrow, it is not referred to the Greek creeks, it is not something we can doubt. And Agape network resonance, you know, when you operate from more than 2, from 3, it's over. You will end up with this sacred heart fire or sacred heart fire, you call it as you wish, or radiance of the heart. Once again, they are only words, but the translation at the level of experience and interpersonal relationships, as with the whole environment, in whatever kingdom it may be, shows you by your gaze, because it unfolds even if you do not feel the energies, the vibration, that you can only have a gaze of love, that you can only have one gaze or the other is not distant from you, where the flower, the ladybird, the mountain, is also you. This is how everything and nothing are combined, in a way, by the primordial androgyne, no longer the end of the primary anomaly, it goes back to May last year, but the end of the distance between the male and the female in us first of all, but also in all relationships. Continuation of questions. Can you explain the reset position and in particular the position of the hands? During the heavenly wedding, hands were put on, for the elders, thumbs were put on the chakras of the soul and the spirit and hands like that, they said like that, I accept the light of Christ in unity and in truth. That's old. Then, there was all the work that was done on these bodies, for those who did the yoga of unity, which had been transmitted by Ram. Then there was Orion's greeting, you remember, and then we put our hands on our hearts. A lot of people, by the way, you see when you listen, have a hand on your heart, it happens all by itself, you talk and then all of a sudden, here, my hand is on your heart. And the position that allows you to solve, what is the duality expressed in our body, about energy? It's the left side and the right side. You know that there were 2 vibratory flows, one in the left leg, one in the right leg, which met at the level of the groin folds, which then went up to the middle channel and the chakras. I told you that when you crossed your ankles, you reunited the 2 lateral flows, male and female. If you cross your ankles, you remove the masculine and feminine polarity, and you do the same thing with your hands on the left side, right side, feminine, masculine, you join your hands as I showed it like that, that is to say that there is no need, thumbs don't matter, fingers are not crossed, it's the palms of the hands that fit together and when you place your palms like that, no matter what the thumbs are, you'll find that the thumbs are placed on the 9th body and that the wrists here are on the hard chakra, and if you cross your ankles you no longer have any polarities. And as light follows the energy and also follows the resonance of your body, you know that the yoga of unity is to put your body in certain postures, as in yoga, to trigger vibratory flows, the activation of gates, stars, as we have done for the elders. But now you just need to do this, join hands, and cross your ankles. You facilitate the harmonization of the 2 lateral flows, male, female, energetically, at the 0 point. The 0 point, there are no more polarities, you have crossed, we have collectively crossed the 40 days, that is, the sign of Jonah. What Christ had given when asked when he came back, he said you will only have the sign of Jonah. It's the video game where everything is written. For example, when we talk about the new root race, you know, in the teachings, even Bernard of Montreal had talked about it, he talked about the blue race, even Alice Bailey talked about it, the next root race is the blue race, but the race has already existed, it's Sirius genetic mothers. All this has already been experienced at the same time outside any space, outside any time, it is a dream outside time and space. Everything has been dreamed of, everything has been created at the same time, it is simply the fragmentation and appearance of what is called time and space, which are nothing more than feminine and masculine. Space is feminine, time is masculine, patriarchy is time is money, interest. Mary, long before the heavenly wedding, we had it, I don't even know if it was even broadcast, had told us about money and that the problem of money is not money, it is usury, that is, giving money a value other than an exchange value. The whole economic system is falling, which was based on usury and interest. There can be no interest on the money. This is what happens. Moreover, I remind you, in Islam, interest-bearing loans do not exist. And all the misfortune comes from there, from appropriation. What is called the ego, is nothing more than the need to be materially rich rather than the need to be rich in spirit and truth. Of course, the circumstances of this world are not the same as they were 2000 years ago. You know very well that if you don't work, if there is no money coming in, you can't live. And even it's transmuted. I am not saying that it is easy, because when things change on habits, we're on habits, on habitual behaviors at all levels. I am not talking about individuals, I am talking about the functioning of society as a whole. To have time while everything in this world reminds us of time, the monthly deadlines, the body that ages, the time that passes, as they say. Time is masculine, space is feminine, as I always said last time and for the past 2 months, that there was a fundamental relationship, an equation between time and space, which do not exist, but they are both connected. The more space there is, the less time there is. At the limit of infinite space, time and space are abolished and what is the omega, i.e. the most distant aspect, is in fact only the alpha. The alpha has joined the omega. As I said, alpha eats omega, omega eats alpha. There are no more alpha than omega, only butter on the stick. And yet, it took a whole bunch of stories, a whole bunch of scenarios, to make this happen. And when I say that it's a video game and everything is written, it can't be any other way. You can only follow what's already written. You have no possibility of action on it. The resolution of zero time, as you know, is the event, it is the stasis, it is the end of the myth of creation, it is the end of all antagonism and polarity illustrated here in our body by the male and female. In the simulacrum, as we have seen, it is the theory of gender, it is the opposite, exactly an inverted image, you are neither male nor female. Once the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine have revealed themselves in you through what has happened during the 40 days, as Christ had said, at the end of 40 days, you're in the Christic state. That's exactly what's happening. I had nothing to do with it, you had nothing to do with it, the script was written, I've always told you. We had to realize that everything was written and that it was a dream. The Agape Resonance Network, the absorption of essences last year, and what is happening now with the fire of the Sacred Heart, it is necessary to call it by something. If you want to change your name, change its name. There, I do not want the name, unlike Agape, because it is a vibratory resonance, that you call it Christic state, that you call it love without any qualification. You can only see it in your life, in the simplest way, in your most simple humanity. It is not accompanied by visions or extrasensory perceptions, it is not accompanied by leaving the body. Many people are going through all this, I have been through all this, I don't know why in fact, but it has been done. There, what happens, happens through your humanity, through your brotherhood, not only to humans, but to the whole of creation. And when I say the whole creation, he is also the worst of the bastards, who is nothing more than you at another time, whatever you still think, it's the strict truth. Okay, the hand position, we saw it. Another question. If I understood correctly, once the natural state is established, it is enough to just pay attention to it for a second, to be Agape, for everyone and anywhere. Exactly, that's what I'm telling you, the miracle becomes daily, it's really like that. So there, I have nothing else to add on this issue, do not worry about the natural state, keep thinking about Agape resonance, network resonance, even if you have deviated a little bit the trip for dental care, interviews or daily circumstances, even if it were not done for that, as I said, because now you all see that, Agape resonance network heals too. Well, that's the way it is. But it leads, once again, to the end of the 40 days. We're here, on this Christic state. And once again, I have no merit, I'm just following the video game. Just as when I talked about the simulacra in relation to whales, that is, the cameraman who was in the water and who was absorbed by the whale, that is not the sign of Jonah, that is what happens in the simulacra. It's the same thing, I told you, it's the same thing at all levels. For example, the theory of gender and androgyny, the false, the real, the falsified mirror image and that, it explodes in the middle of the face, you'll see it from everywhere, even in your behavior, even in your history. You can no longer be fooled by yourself, you can no longer be fooled by your life circumstances, whatever they may be. And at that moment, you will find that the radiance of the heart, the chakra of the heart, is permanent, that you can neither meditate nor seek better circumstances than to be fully present in your life at every moment. Moreover, you cannot do otherwise. You will find that indeed, everything that is a phenomenon of vision, whatever it is, everything that is a phenomenon of perception, whatever it is, no longer has any importance. You can only say I and my Father are one, period. Everything else is done from there and does not depend on you. So, of course, it will take place more or less quickly, more or less openly, but in an extremely short period of time for countless brothers and sisters. I'm not saying the whole earth, but for many. And all this, of course, once the sign of Jonah has passed, between March 30th and Easter, which is April 21st, I think, that weekend, anyway. From there, you return to your simplest humanity. It is Teresa's childhood path, spontaneously. And you will not be able to do otherwise than love, even the most detestable things, because you are really and concretely love and nothing else. And this is coming up in protest. Next question. Jean, look, the first night, you did a job on each of us. Can you give us more information? No, I cannot give you any information, because now I have been asked and I experienced it last year in a way important enough to understand well enough, that love has no use for an explanation and has no use for any understanding. It is at this price that the fire of the Sacred Heart is active. So, no. If indeed on the first night, as I said, there are somewhere, without wanting to, where I left my body, I found myself with them, even if I had some information, I will not give it to you, because it is useless. Love is naked and does not need explanations, understanding, knowing what happened, and besides, you will accept that too, when you see that love acts on you independently of any decision and any will. As I said, you no longer need any teaching. As I have told some groups, you no longer need me at the collective level. My availability is mainly at the individual level, but not for an individual or a story, but to offer you an embrace, that's all. I don't need to know what I embrace, I don't need to know what your specificities are, because they belong to you. I simply need to embrace you as a being of love, that's all. Everything else is just passing through. So no, I won't give you any explanation, I won't give any information to anyone. That is to say, the more the act of love, the more this spontaneous love, is not cluttered with concepts, intention, will to heal, the more effective it is. That's how I disappear too, and that's how you disappear too. It is certainly not by explaining to you what I saw, what I felt or what happened, even if indeed we did it for many of you last year, through the K where, you remember, I wrote reports for half an hour of everything that was happening. I explained to you that I had come to the hands with Bidi and with Christ, the historical figure, I am speaking, because I did not understand. You know, as a doctor, I had the opportunity to see everything outside your body. Wow. It was a lot of enthusiasm, until I accepted and checked with the practice myself that there was no need for all this. There is no need to feed yourself, there is just a need to love you, to restore you to this natural state. And I can't make you recover this natural state from the outside. On the other hand, if I am in my natural state, the Christic state, I am instantly in you. Christ did not need to know why the woman who touched her was healed. You know, I can feel when people think of me, sometimes it happens by the hundreds, by the thousands, they resonate. Now they understand, they don't need to ask me anything. Even among themselves, the brothers and sisters before made appointments, now they do it during the day while cooking, go on, I think of this Agape person and it is done. It is a natural state, in the natural state there are no questions, there are no visions. Even if they are, they have no interest. However, as you have seen, the testimonies, yes, because you are in the testimonies. You find yourself, of course, in the other's experience, and sometimes you don't find yourself and it makes you angry, it puts you at a distance, but even that distance is like a rubber band, the more it will stretch you, the more it will come back to you. It cannot be otherwise, it cannot be, it really is something that is unfolding now and which, as I said, is automatic, inexorable, inevitable, but which now appears in the manifestation. You have nothing to do, live your life, what you have to live, be as natural as possible. The more natural you will be, the more you will open the floodgates of embrace, not by questioning yourself, but precisely by accepting not to question yourself anymore, to let grace work in all areas of your life. Anyway, you will be so much more and more constant in joy, but it is no longer an exuberant joy, it is something that is totally aligned at the 0 point and you notice it, everything passes through you and nothing is stopped, which doesn't mean you can't be upset when you have a problem, but you don't mix things up anymore. You see that there is what you really are and what you play on the stage that you are forced to play, since you have a body, whether it is to go wash, eat, see the doctor and so on. But everything is magnified. Once again, it is not a view of the mind, it is not something that will happen in 10 years or in a year, it is now. It's up to you, and it's up to one thing, to embrace. Do not try to understand what it means to embrace, pronounce it and you will experience it and it will be simpler and simpler for the light, for love and more complicated for the person and for those who are still in spiritual attachments, we will say, to a story, to a savior, to a master. There is no master, there is no savior, there is no world, what are you waiting for? Your whole life will be transformed, it can't be any other way, we can all see it for those who are already living it. So, next question, we come back to the same question as before, namely, what is the best way to treat yourself? Embrace and forget you. But that doesn't mean, as I've always said, that if you have something that resists that, you can go to a doctor, whatever you want, really treat yourself physically and materially. Do not make the mistake of saying, oh yes, I'm love, so everything will be done either. No, there are things to take care of materially. For 2 years, you talked a lot about mushrooms, fatty acids and all that, and it allowed many people to eat physically. Do not be so stupid as to believe that love will treat everything, because there are things that are untreatable by love, because they are precisely there for you to take care of physically. So I'm not asking you to believe, I'm asking you to live the experience, and the more you live it, the more you will find, as I said, as I have lived it and as many of us have, that there are things that disappear, there are things that don't disappear, they are part of your path, they are part of the script that has been written. And at that moment, you have to address what is official, doctor, energy, psycho, what you want, surgeon, if necessary, but the support of love will show you at that moment that even in very serious things, if there has been a need for action, it will be totally harmless, it can never go wrong. Moreover, as time and space are now being reduced to a shagreen, you now know that all the ships are there, all the creations are there, around the sun, around the earth. I said that Gaia was the origin of creation, the first dream of creation, which is obviously linked to whales. That's why whales have changed their behavior and oceanographers have noticed it. They no longer stay in the abyss, they always come into contact with humans. And before, you sometimes had humpback whales, you had dolphins, sometimes you had a whale and now they all come together. That's what's going to happen. You have videos being shot right now and even the oceanographic museum that came out of it. The cetacean people, as Bridget delivered, the first message from fame is the strict truth. The cetaceans are taking us out of our dreams. We're the dream just as we dreamed them, it is the first and last dream, the alpha and the omega, the geneticist mothers, the first birth, the first tear of this birth between the male and the female. Because it's a tear, it's a lag. That's why we make love, that's why we seek our soulmate, that's why we need the other person emotionally, sexually or magnificently in transcended love. We were, the end of the primary anomaly made it possible, after 10 months, 11 months, to recover the totality of our androgynous, right here on Earth, in incarnation. So, of course, don't expect your genitals to disappear or breasts to grow, but nevertheless, you will no longer be able to think of yourself as a man or a woman, it's impossible. You are neither one nor the other, you are both, but that does not prevent you from having a relationship with the opposite sex or from having a loving relationship with the same sex, if you want, it doesn't matter, but never again will things be the same. So we have seen the best way to treat ourselves, so, can someone tell me the time? Because I don't have any more time right now. Sister, 11:30 am. Well, we have time. So, either we make a break now, or I'll give you the floor on what you have to ask for. Eventually, if you have nothing to say, to the microphone that is there, if among the listeners, there are some who want to ask a question, but please, not too long, let me have time to read it. Because if you describe too much, then there are other comments that appear and I don't have time to read. or here. In the meantime, you can write it if you don't want to talk, but if you want to talk, you come all the way down here to talk into the microphone. So, wait, I'll see if there are any questions coming up here in the meantime. No, they're having a personal conversation listening to me. Laughs. There are fewer and fewer questions. Sister, I would be for a break. So I can't hear anything, and neither can the microphone. Sister, oh yes, all right. Sister, a cut. You have to come here, we won't see you, it's just to talk into the microphone. Brother, it would be for a break. How? How? Sister, stop. Brother, a little break. Sister, a little break. Oh yes, so we're going to take a little break. It's 11:30, we talked for an hour and a half, we're back from noon to 1 o'clock, for example, is that okay? Sister, yes. Very good. Come on, let's take a little break and come back in half an hour, then. I'll see you in a few minutes. Sister, thank you, Jean-Luc. Through Jean-Luc Young. Les transformations. Transcription from French. Agape. English translation. LMF.